Hello my friends, in today's video we're going to talk about things that I have learned through my own course of therapy. As you may already know, if you're new to this channel, I am in graduate school training to become a therapist. A lot of the reason that I went down this path to becoming a therapist is because of the personal growth that I have experienced in my own course of therapy over the years. And I know that I've talked about a lot of these things related to relationships before, but I really wanted to share my own personal journey with you because I think it's really helpful to see how these things have been experienced in my own life and the kind of understanding that therapy has helped bring to my life in the area of relationships specifically. So I have 3 key learnings for you today, and I hope that by understanding a little bit about my own journey in therapy, that you can start to understand how therapy might be able to help you if you've never been before, specifically in the area of relationships. So without further ado, thank you so much for joining me today. Let's get started. The first relationship learning that I learned about in therapy was related to accountability. Now, a little bit about my own journey. When I was in earlier relationships, I struggled with holding myself accountable. I would oftentimes blame my partner if things went wrong, and I didn't hold myself responsible for the kinds of things that I was bringing up that were adding conflict to our relationship. And what this really meant in my relationship was that I was looking for the negative constantly. I was having these negative thought patterns about my partner. I would blame her all the time. And what that really led to was this feeling of negativity towards my partner and this feeling that I couldn't be involved in conflict. Through therapy, I learned 3 things related to this. I learned how to identify the negative thought patterns that would come up for me. I learned to understand where these thought patterns were coming from, how they were automatic, how my mind would tend towards the negative. And so in the moment when that feeling of blame began to come up, I was able to recognize it and then take action against it. And that leads me to the second part of what I learned related to accountability, which is I learned how to be accountable. I learned how to take on my part of the conflict. This was really hard for me because I was so entrenched in this kind of blaming mindset, in this like, oh, it's never my fault kind of mindset. And what it really meant for me long term was that I was able to recognize when something bad was going on in our relationship, when I was in a conflict situation, which part was mine, and be able to take ownership of it. When your partner begins to recognize that in you, that you're taking ownership, that you're standing up for the part of the conflict that was yours, then they begin to do the same. They recognize that you're not just blaming them all the time, and it becomes a much more equal relationship and back and forth. And therapy helped me get there. Number 2 is related to commitment. In the past, I was really scared of committing to my partner. That may sound crazy, but I think a lot of you have probably been in this situation before where you're caught up in this grass is always greener mentality. You're always looking for the next best thing. And that was really my case. I would not really fully commit to the relationships that I was in. I had one foot in, one foot out. And what that meant in practicality is that I was not fully present with my partner. Not only was I not fully present with them in the moment in our relationship, but I was constantly thinking of how my partner didn't compare to other people who I met in day-to-day life. I was constantly comparing them, and again, with your mind tending towards the negative, what that begins to do is it begins to build up this case against your partner in your mind. And that can be so dangerous and threatening and harmful to relationships long-term for obvious reasons, right? You begin to think of how negative your partner is. You begin to only focus on these qualities of theirs that you don't like and that compare negatively to another person. And you also don't see that other person, that magical being that you're comparing them to, the bad aspects of that person as well. Because obviously no one is perfect, and if you were in a long-term relationship with that person, just as many things would come up in the long term. So this aspect of keeping one foot in, one foot out, I began to work on it in therapy, and what I learned from that experience was so positive for my current relationship. When I met my wife, it was after years of working on this issue in therapy and going through many different relationships where I'd failed miserably. The benefit of being able to go through that process in therapy with another person and work on these skills meant that when I entered into my new relationship with my partner, I wasn't perfect, but I recognized when these thoughts and feelings began to come up, this aspect of keeping one foot in, one foot out, and I was able to change it. I was able to make a conscious choice to dive in. And what that meant was that we were able to reach a much deeper level of relationship faster than I'd ever had before. And I made a decision to fully commit to this relationship, to really dive in and give it my all. And what that really meant for me long term was that Obviously things worked out, we got married, but that was partially because we were able to develop this deeper level of connection, this deeper level relationship. I was able to dive in and say, when conflict comes up, I'm not going to run away. I'm going to stand here and work with you through it. And when I showed up more fully, my partner showed up more fully as well. And I think that that's one of the really big pieces that I want you to take away from this commitment aspect is it may not always end up perfectly with the person that you commit to. Sometimes things don't work out and you may need to go in a different direction. But showing up fully makes the other person show up fully as well, and that's where you get into this deep, powerful relationship that can really be so positive in your life. I know it has been for me. In therapy, again, helped me get there. The third thing is around speaking up. In the past, I really struggled with conflict conversations with my partner. I've made a bunch of videos about these now. I'm much better. And a lot of that is because of the work that I did in therapy. When I would get into conversations with past partners, I would go into two different things. I would either begin to blame them and again think negative, like, oh, this person is so angry, etc. And I would immediately pick out these negative things and begin to again ruminate on them, so that it was all I began to think about. That obviously can be really damaging to your relationship long term. And it's not fair to the other person. Just for bringing up a conflict, that doesn't mean that they're to blame for all of the negative things in the relationship. The other thing that really happened for me was something that John Gottman, a renowned relationship psychologist, has talked about with emotional flooding. When somebody would bring up conflict in my relationship, I would get flooded, I would retreat inward, and I would close down. And all that did for my relationship was mean that I couldn't speak up about things that were bothering me, or I couldn't express myself in a way that was really positive. So through therapy, again, I was able to identify this kind of conflict situation, identify my own reactions, figure out that I could get emotionally flooded, understand in my body what that really felt like, and then choose from that place of understanding to respond differently. And the great thing about therapy is that you have somebody who's with you who you can practice these skills with over and over again. So you're not putting all of that work on your partner all the time. The cool thing there was that I was able to really kind of role play these situations with my therapist and work on it again and again and again until I could build up those coping skills, build up the confidence that would allow me to actually bring that up in my relationship, speak up about things that were bothering me, and be able to stand firm and communicate my needs effectively to my partner. This has been so important in our relationship because my partner and I respond to conflict situations very differently. Being able to explain to her the knowledge of kind of how I react so that she's aware of it in the moment and can respond in a better way is helpful, but then also being able to work on my own response and respond in a way that's more positive in the moment has been so crucial to helping us develop a healthy conflict style in our relationship. Now, I'm not going to say I'm perfect, but therapy has helped me get to a place where I am much better at these three things: accountability, commitment, and speaking up. And I just want to say that, a lot of people will watch this video and say, oh, well, couldn't I just do that with a friend? Or couldn't I just read books about that topic? Well, of course you could. And I encourage you to do those types of things. I think that it's really important for us to be constantly learning and trying to grow in our relationships. That really helps things overall. However, what therapy can really help you do is give you a third-party perspective, somebody who's going to be there with you to bounce ideas off of, to help you role play some of these difficult situations, to give you an outsider's perspective from a non-judgmental, non-attached viewpoint. And that's the real benefit that therapy has had for me. You also get an expert opinion on how to develop certain coping skills, how to manage certain conversations, and how to develop healthier relationships from a science-based background. So I wanted to share some of these things to help you understand why therapy has been so helpful to my own relationship and help you understand that maybe therapy would be a good choice for you. I know a lot of people struggle with the decision to go seek out a therapist, especially men. I've been there myself, but I want to let you know that it is really helpful and it can be such a place of personal growth in relationships and other things. In case this subject has been really helpful for you, I have other videos that I could make on things that I've learned from therapy. Let me know down in the comments below if this is something that would be useful to you, and I'll make another video. Thanks so much.